At a house in the countryside, geologist Abby is spending time with her older sister Beth. They recently lost their mother, so they're trying to support each other to get through the grief. But tragedy strikes again when Beth is diagnosed with advanced leukemia. No doctor wants to take her case because there's nothing they can do. You're watching Cine Digest, and this is Movie Recapped. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more awesome stories. But Abby refuses to give up and finds out about a foreign treatment center that does some not-so-ethical therapies. To pay for Beth's treatment there, Abby is forced to take a very dangerous job. After a while, she arrives in the Caucasus Mountains in Georgia near the Russian border. She's hired by a private mining company to find uranium deposits. Her father doesn't approve because he thinks Abby deserves a better job than being a company dog. But she's desperate to save her sister. She even asks for money in advance, but her boss refuses unless she finds something first. Abby and her coworker Sergey spend long hours looking for uranium with zero results. They're supposed to stay inside the marked zones, but Abby decides to keep searching deeper into the forest. Sergey refuses because it's dangerous, so Abby takes his weapon and tells him to leave her and go. Creepy sounds in the forest make her nervous, but she calms a little when she finds a very strange black rock. Back at the base, Abby runs several tests and notices the rock has a high temperature, but she still can't identify it. Her excitement is interrupted by a call from her dad telling him he's pulling Beth out of the center and bringing her home to die with her family. Abby refuses that idea and tells him she's coming right now. Suddenly, the building shakes and the lights cut out. Once it stops, Abby packs her things and asks Sergey to take her to the airport. Then she gets on a helicopter headed home. The pilots tell her they fly near the border to remind the Russians that this valley isn't theirs. Hours into the flight, Abby is shocked to see birds at that altitude. But when the helicopter changes direction, she realizes those aren't birds. It's a dark silhouette making a crackling sound. The pilot says it's closing in before the copter starts shaking, surrounded by darkness on the windows, then the darkness vanishes. Suddenly, all the systems fail, including the radio. They need to land immediately, but then the engine fails too. Abby straps in and the helicopter drops fast. Oxygen gets thin. She focuses on her breathing, thinks of her sister, closes her eyes, right before the helicopter crashes into the mountains. Unconscious, Abby dreams of telling her father not to do anything reckless and that she's coming home soon. Then she wakes up, climbing out of the wreckage, bleeding, with part of the helicopter on fire. She finds one of the pilots dead. She checks the other one, wraps his wound, and tells him to keep pressure on it. She steps outside and screams for help. Nothing. She returns to the helicopter. The injured pilot tells her how to use the backup radio. But no matter what she tries, no one responds. Abby checks the map and estimates the nearest road is about 60 miles south, so she breaks open crates and lights a big fire hoping someone will see it. In the morning, she discovers the other pilot died. She breaks down crying because she's completely alone. At night, she dreams about Beth's weak condition and wakes up terrified. She goes outside to warm up and sees the fire is out. Abby refuses to give up. She gathers anything useful from the helicopter, even the gun and flare. She puts on extra layers and walks south following the compass. The moment she gets away from the helicopter, she hears radio static. She runs back, but nothing is working. Then the sound returns from the pilot's radio on his belt, but it cuts off when she tries to use it. So she grabs the flight manual and searches for charging ports. She leaves it to charge and, while waiting, keeps her eye on the weird rock. Finally, the radio works and Abby contacts an American pilot named John, whose helicopter also crashed in the area. His legs are stuck and he can't move. His antenna is broken too. Abby tells him she can fix her antenna and asks where he is. John says he sees a lake. She finds it on the map and starts a new journey to reach him. John warns her the area is occupied and dangerous, but she ignores him. Climbing a hill, she tells him she's doing all this for her sister. Then she pauses to calm herself. John talks about the slim odds, like 1 in a million, a phrase that gives her hope. She keeps going, remembering when Beth told her she didn't want to fight anymore. John says Abby's lucky to have a sister who fights for her. But Abby reaches a steep cliff she can't climb, so she has to take a detour. She fails to notice the black stones around her. On a new path, she manages to climb and enters a forest to camp for the night. John says he can no longer feel his leg. Abby lights a fire and builds a shelter, but the rain puts out the flames. She remembers the rock and reaches for it, and sees it react. John encourages her and reveals he's military, so he speaks from experience. In the morning, Abby continues and reaches a snowy valley. The wind is freezing. She finds a stream and drinks. After hours, she realizes she's surrounded by more mountains. The only way is up. She tries to climb and slips immediately. John tells her to go back. She explodes in anger. "I'm sick of everyone telling me to stop." John gives up. "Your call. Good luck." Abby removes her gloves and climbs higher. She finds better holds and gets a little farther, until she reaches a spot with nowhere to place her foot. When she tells John, he suddenly says, "Shame, you're one of my favorites," and disconnects. Abby tries calling him back. Nothing. She pulls out a tool and drives it into the rock, but falls when she steps on it. She calms down and thinks, remembers the rock, and the doctor saying there are no miracles. Yet a miracle is happening. She moves her hand and sees the rock changing shape. She ties a rope to it, anchors it to the cliff, and climbs to the top. The rope snaps the rock back. And that's when she sees the dark shape flying above with that terrifying crackling sound. Abby uses binoculars and spots lights, a military base. She builds a large fire and arranges stones in an arrow showing her direction. But after walking for a while, John returns to warn her. "If the Russians see that signal, they'll kill you." She panics and falls, hurting herself. Frustrated, she shuts off the radio and tends her wound. Suddenly, she hears something and sees a soldier searching. She runs. Her injury and the snow make walking nearly impossible. She uses a stick. After leaving the forest, she finds old abandoned buildings, goes inside to rest and hide. She finds broken things and photos of families killed during the Russian invasion. She searches everywhere and finds stuff to make fire and a moldy piece of bread that disgusts her. She wraps her hands with bandages and injects an expired shot into her stomach. She looks at Beth's photo and imagines her suffering. At night, Abby dreams of their good days in the hospital. Beth was exhausted and wanted to go home, but Abby forced her to stay. She admitted she wasn't doing it for Beth. She was doing it for herself. In the morning, Abby wakes up to the sound of a radio. She looks out the window. The soldier is close. She locks the door and hides under the window. He checks quickly, doesn't see her, and keeps walking. When she reaches her bag, the gun magazine falls. The noise alerts him, and he tries to force the door open. He circles and finds another entry. Abby gets the gun ready. He spots her and points his weapon, speaking Russian. Abby panics and fires. The bullet hits his gun and injures his leg. She takes his weapon and bag, and he says the name Ivan. Abby lowers the gun and opens his bag, finding a flashlight and cigarettes, and a black rock just like hers. Suddenly, John's voice from the soldier's radio says, "You were one of my favorites," and the soldier confirms his name is Ivan. Abby is shocked and realizes they were tricked. The voice asks, "Don't you want to see Beth again?" Then silence. Abby apologizes to the soldier, bandages his wound, and puts him on the couch. She asks him to help her get the radio signal to the base so they won't shoot her. Not sure he understands. They walk together, stumbling because of their injuries. They rest, and she takes out the rock, and suddenly, the crackling sound. She realized the rock attracted the dark shadow and caused the helicopter crash and radio failure. That's why the radio worked again when she moved away from it. Abby gets angry and throws the rock away. They walk through a snowy valley, and when they push snow with their feet, they discovered they're on a frozen lake. Abby moves farther away so their weight won't break the ice. Suddenly, she hears crackling. She turns and the soldier is gone. She looks around and the ice breaks under her and she falls into a pit. But she grabs the edge and climbs out after struggling. The storm gets worse. Visibility disappears. She screams but keeps walking. She reaches the edge of a forest and finds a cigarette the soldier dropped. She's exhausted and removes her wet clothes, crawling into a sleeping bag to stay warm. John's voice returns, telling her he went through the same thing, watching his crew die one by one. His heartbeat slowed, but then he found salvation. Abby falls asleep and dreams of Beth.
She wakes up to the sound of a helicopter. She runs through the forest trying to be seen, but they don't notice her and fly away. The cold takes over. She collapses hearing Beth's voice asking her to come home. She passes out and falls through an opening into a cave. Her body rolls onto a rock and into a pool, next to John's rotten corpse covered in pieces of the black rock. At the bottom of the pool, dark material tries to get into her body. The rock is a being that steals voices of real people and lures them, like it did to John 65 years ago. Abby awakens on dry ground, with rocks floating around her. The entity, speaking in John's voice, congratulates her for making it and says he was afraid she'd die like the others. Abby accuses it of causing every disaster and asks why it brought her here. It says every decision was hers. The rocks form half a human body, and it says John agreed to be the entity's host so he could live. Then it offers Abby the same privilege. Abby refuses and says she wants to go home. The voice says she's already home, and Beth's house appears behind her. A force pushes her inside, where she sees piles of black rock. The entity says she's afraid of death, but ready to defeat it, and she can do that if she surrenders herself. Abby runs room to room until she finds Beth. She rushes to her, and Beth holds her hand. Suddenly, Abby wakes up in Beth's house and finds her perfectly healthy, and hears the crackling. Abby cries and hugs her, but then the hospital scene flashes, and she realizes it's another trick from the entity. She understands she needs to let her sister go. She apologizes for forcing her and says one final goodbye. As she walks to the door, the radio begs her to stay because this is what she wants. Abby refuses and says she learned the lesson. Without death, there is no life. Beth begs her not to leave, but Abby opens the door and steps out into the storm, screaming for help. At that moment, Abby awakens inside the sleeping bag. She remembers the flare and fires it immediately. The helicopter returns and rescues her. 2 days later in the hospital, Abby wakes up in an apartment with Sergey and his grandmother. He tells her to rest, but she insists on going home, so he drives her to the airport. Then we see Abby and her father visiting Beth at home, a caregiver watching over her. Beth has little time left, so Abby and her dad step outside and cry without upsetting Beth. At night, the nurse says the time has come. Abby and her father sit beside Beth and support her until she dies. And that's the end of today's movie. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Cine Digest for more amazing stories with Movie Recapped.